So I have to introduce a new segment here where I discover that I've had a little bit too much alcohol and I need to exit for a minute. So edit this part out.
Start the game already!
I'd like to petition, now
Okay.
that we're recording two separate episodes at once.
Costume change.
No, that's way
Oh.
too much work. No, we just need to think about this one as like a nutty after dark.
Oh.
Because we're already like half
three
blitzed
sheets
by
to the
time-
wind.
Yeah.
Well, do we want to separate it out into not two channels, but two? I don't know what to call it. It's like two shows, right? It's a different show where it's like you've got Nutty and Nutty After Dark.
Nah.
And we can talk about boobs.
We can do that anyway.
I mean, we did a whole big long convoluted thing about being respectful towards women and the poor treatment they get in the nerd community, and then the very first thing is like boobs are great. I mean, it's true. Boobs are great. Everybody loves boobs. They're life sustaining. Kudos to women.
Cheers.
For putting up with us and our shit.
Well, you're drinking the same shit.
I am drinking the same shit. It is still the same terrible vodka until I get through it or start cleaning floors with it. So yeah. So vodka and pink lemonade tonight. Looks like you've opened a new can.
I've switched. I'm getting daring. I've switched from Summersby apple cider to Strongbow Gold apple cider, which tastes almost the same.
I mean, it's made from apples mostly. Are you a fan of Terry Pratchett?
I haven't read as much Pratchett as I'd like. But
you should.
What I've read, I've enjoyed.
The entire Granny Weatherwax sort of arc of stories is great. There's a character in that called Nanny Og, and Nanny Og makes this thing called I think it's Nanny Og that makes the apple scumble. But it's sort of the tagline for it is it's healthy. It's made from mostly apples. And it's like 300% proof or something. It's like literally it's shipped in like ceramic casks because it'll eat through wooden barrels. It's the kind of thing where you serve it in, like you've got blacksmith's gloves and you serve it with special tongs and you pour like one drop into like a barrel of water and that's how you serve it. And then, somebody has a thimble full of this super dilute stuff and still falls over and, wakes up 3 weeks later. Yeah. It's healthy. It's made from apples.
Yeah. The only Pratchett stuff I've really read is some of the Discworld stuff.
Yeah. That's where that happens.
Yep. I don't remember
that. It's, there's the witches go on vacation. I don't remember the names of most of them. The only one I always remember is Guards, which is the beginning of the Sam Vimes arc, which is really worth reading. Maybe that should be our next thing is that we read a Terry Pratchett book and talk about his excellent satire.
We'll put it on the list.
It's on the list. I'm always game to go back and read them again. As soon as I found one, I read it. I read the stuff he wrote for kids. I read the stuff that people wrote about him. Just a great man, and he is sorely missed.
Rest in peace.
Mm-hmm.
So I had an idea, sort of spur of the moment, just before we were going to record a discussion we can have for this. But before we get into it, I do think we need to just touch base on Baldur's Gate quickly.
We do. I was thinking about this.
I used to be an adventurer like you.
Stay a while and listen.
I don't know if you read the YouTube description for the last podcast we released, but basically it was like, And then we talked about Baldur's Gate again, for the third time. Okay, it's a pretty good game. So I think this will be the fourth time we're talking about it. I'm sure Ian's sick of it by now.
Yeah.
But
Is
this is
Ian
only the
playing?
second time we've recorded since you started playing it. No, Ian is not playing. He's too snooty for video games. He got into some of them.
What?
I know. There's some that he enjoys. Honestly, he's in a new relationship. He's enjoying California. Like,
he's too busy
who's
going
got time?
outside.
Yeah, who's got time for video games when there's the beach right there and
love's
young
first
love
blush.
and
Yeah.
We'll get you playing video games eventually, Ian.
Yeah.
Probably 2 weeks after getting you on this podcast.
Yeah, for sure.
All right.
So do you have
had
something you want to shoot? Ask the question.
Well, you now are a full week ish into Baldur's Gate. When last we spoke, you were in the middle of your 6th or so attempt at starting the game.
At least 6th.
You mentioned that you've been through that goblin compound now, so I assume that you've settled on a character. So let's start there. What are you playing?
I have settled on a character, and it is an elven ranger. Mostly because, and I kind of regret it at times, because I want to have Astarion in my party, and having two sort of stealthy based characters doesn't make sense. I originally rolled the ranger because I wanted to take Astarion out of my party, which is a little bit bonkers.
Okay, so let's start with party then. Who are you tend to default to when you don't have a specific situation that requires a particular
I haven't actually come across a situation that really requires a particular one. I've dabbled with. I started off with. I have Karlach in the party just because she's so much fun.
Mm-hmm.
I had Lae'zel in the party for the longest time, again, just because she's fun to. Shadowheart almost seems like she needs to be in the party. Like, I'm not sure how you would play through this game without her. I'm sure it's possible, and I think my next playthrough is going to be I'm going to leave her in the pod and just see what happens. I imagine that she'll become an enemy of some kind at that point. And I have swapped. Who did I originally have? That's 3. I swapped Lae'zel out for Will, just to see what having a warlock would be like. And I like the warlock, except it didn't fit with the party makeup very well. So I've swapped him out and put Gale back in. Because again, Gale is just like, I think, first of all, Gale approves of everything I do, right? Which says to me, like, he belongs in my party because he and I we share an alignment. And I do find whoever did his voice acting is just awesome. So I think that's probably where I'm going to sort of stick with from here on out. Here's a funny thing, right? Like I've started 6 or 7 times. I have 32 hours into my current playthrough.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And not only that, but after we last recorded, and if you recall, I had a little more alcohol than normal. After we signed off, I went and played, and I was literally talking to the first sort of goblin leader. Like that's where I loaded in, and I did an oops and did a bunch of sneaking around and managed to aggro the entire fort. Right, like I had all 3 bosses in combat at the same time, and I almost pulled it off too. It was close, but then I realized, oh my god, my last save point is where? I'm going to bed. So I picked it up again today and did it a little bit more strategically. And I did manage to get through that. I still have a little bit of cleanup to do, I think, in the fort. But one of the things I wanted to talk about is a comment that I saw on the interwebs, where someone said the map makes the world feel small. And it's something that I noticed sort of like at the very beginning of playing through, is that like the encounters and the things that you do are very dense on the map, which is kind of a departure from previous ways that video games have done this, right? Like if you go back to the original Baldur's Gate, for example, it's like you walk around a screen and there's like sort of like a 16 square by 16 square thing, and then there's like a gate, and you go through the gate and you warp to another area, right? Which is fine. I mean, it's a perfectly valid way of doing it. But the way that Larian has chosen to do this is to sort of in the other direction. It's like, yeah, there's 300 feet of road between like the druid compound and the next encounter, right? So you don't have to walk very far, but it's the same thing as if you walk through a gate. Like pretend that 300 feet of road is 3.5 miles or 30 miles or however much, right? It's abstracted a little bit. And I was thinking about this too as I'm going through the Goblin Fort. It's like I literally left corpses on the ground and went back and had a long rest. Like I went back to camp and slept for the night and came back the next day. And I think that and I think I've talked about this too with sort of racing games and driving games, where there has to be a balance between realism and the understanding that this is a video game, right? You can't do all of the things. Like if you were going to do this in real life, and for goodness sake, please don't do this in real life. Like people die. Like killing people and going into a fort and killing people is a bad idea. It's a bad thing to do. But you would hide those bodies, right? You would clean up after yourself and go, I don't know,
Yeah.
they were fine when I left them, right?
But just like nobody's first choice of job is being the janitor, it's a game.
It's a game.
So there's a couple things that I want to mention related to that. One, it's a game that's based on a tabletop game.
Yes.
And talking about the world feeling small and like the spaces between things, one encounter to the next feeling small. I mean, the alternative to that isn't appealing.
No.
Right? Like the gate changing places, porting to a new room, like that doesn't fundamentally change the equation.
Nope.
The length of time between one encounter and the next doesn't change. So it's more just about a vibe with the world and you perceive it. But you know what you don't generally do in a tabletop role-playing game? Spend
about
3
walking.
sessions on the road walking. You don't do that thing from Wise Man's Fear where you have a group of characters walking through the woods bitching about how wet they are and cold and that they're finding nothing for 72 chapters.
Yeah.
Because it's a game and that's not fun.
Yeah, that's a slog.
You're going out of your way to find nits if that's what you're griping. Now, I do fundamentally agree with the idea that yes, it does make the world feel small, but there's another consideration here. First of all, this isn't the world. This isn't even the continent. Hell, this isn't even like the entirety of the region. This is the area around a single city and some of the places directly underneath it. If you look at the world of Toril, continent of Faerun, Sword Coast, things like that, like the geography works in both axes, right? Like you've got your the surface of your world, and then you've also got verticality where you've got things like under city, under mountain, under dark, several layers of that. The hells, several layers of those. And while they're technically
no, the hells aren't in the same physical space.
They're not in the same physical space, but like you think of them the same way, right?
Sure.
Like there's just, I mean, there's 9 layers of hell or 9 levels of hell. I mean, it's sort of a Dante-ish kind of thing. But the point is like what we're seeing here is just the tiny sort of vignette of Baldur's Gate and what's happening immediately around it. Now, you could then take that argument and say, well, isn't it convenient that all the important things in this world seem to be happening right here?
That's why the story happened here. Yeah. Also, there's a certain amount of
the game's called Baldur's Gate. Like I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, no, and it wasn't specifically, I don't think, a complaint, more of an observation, and
And
it's
I
a
generally
valid.
agree with the observation, but
Yeah,
it's an observation that you like. If you're focusing on it as being a negative thing, then you're ignoring
yeah,
the fact that the objective here is to be a game.
yeah. It's
You know,
squished, and there's some of the game that I noticed in playing today is that, like, I did the massive encounter of like fighting the sort of last boss in the Goblin Fort, and at one point the initiative, and I have a single ultra wide monitor, and
hmm
my initiative bar was the whole top of my screen. Like, it was, I'm like, I was literally waiting 3.5 minutes between my characters having a turn as
yeah,
people go dash, run, beat on the drum, call reinforcement, dash. And as much as that's a little bit frustrating, it is actually kind of cool that that sort of thing happens, and also that the combat happened on like 3 different levels. Like, there were people in
hmm
the rafters, there was a bunch of us, and I had my party split between the main floor and the rafters, and there were enemies in the rafters and on the main floor and in a pit below that. And there were a couple of times where it's like, all right, it's a little frustrating to target someone in the rafters from the ground floor, but at the same time, wouldn't it be a little
hmm
bit frustrating to try and target somebody in the rafters from the ground
yeah.
floor?
I don't know if we've spoken about it, but I definitely talked to one of my coworkers, Paul, who's also playing and loving the game. One of the things that always comes up with this type of game is the idea of saves coming in, whether it's a good thing or not.
Yes and no.
Yes and no. There's parts of the game where, like D&D, like tabletop gaming, the effect of a bad roll or something not going your way can actually make for a much better story in the long run. So
Yes.
I would discourage saves coming for those reasons, but saves coming can also be a game within a game. Like taking that example where your initiative tracker was just, your whole screen. Depending on the type of player you are, that might be the type of thing where it's like, oh, okay, well, here's a problem to solve now. Let me back up and try and figure out how I can
Yep.
chunk this up. How can I'm not, you're not significantly changing the narrative, but you're identifying another problem within the game and then using the tool of your saves to back up and kind of reapproach that problem.
Call it scouting. Because
Yeah.
most of the time that I've reloaded something has been because there's something, like, there's a couple of times where I've done it for bugs, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a big game,
Some
it's a
bugs,
complicated
or
game. There's gonna
sometimes
have you have some,
yeah,
but
sometimes you
there's
just get hosed by, how combat starts, right? It's conversation, your people are in the wrong spot, and it's just like, oh, I'm being shoved into lava. Like, there's just no way around this. I gotta
yep.
back up and position my guys a little bit better. And that's the one thing where, like, you need to look at those quick saves, as the fact that, as amazing as this game is, and all the effort that's been put into recreating the feel and experience of playing tabletop games, the one thing that
Mhm.
they can't recreate is a forgiving dungeon master.
Or a dungeon master saying, "Are you sure?
Dungeon
Are you
master saying, "Are you sure?" Or a dungeon master that's recognizing that you've done something. Here's the consequences. Let
Do
me
you want to go
work with you
back?"
to find a solution here.
Yeah.
Either go back, or, like, let's say you aggro that whole big mass of people. Like, that could happen in a game. And in a tabletop game, the DM, unless they're an asshole, isn't going to expect you to combat that out. They're going to work with you. Like, they want to, I would certainly at my table work to create the sense of, oh shit, you're in very, very real trouble. But then work with my players to find a creative, atypical solution to that problem, right?
Hmm.
Like, the one thing that you can't do in this game effectively is run away.
It's tough. It's
It,
possible.
it's
I have done it.
possible, but it's tough. Where, in a real game, like, even if it wasn't feasible or
Feasible?
plausible,
Yeah.
a DM's gonna say, "Oh yeah, you manage to find a way to slip out
Yeah.
without attracting notice, and then you allow your players to come back at that situation a little bit more strategically. And you'll up the stakes, you'll react, you'll have more guards patrolling because they knew somebody was in here or something like that. Like, you're going to react to what they did, but you're not going to overwhelm them because
Some DMs
yeah,
do, though, and that's
yeah,
I don't like that kind of game where it's like, well, this is what the dice said, so you're all dead, and we'll reconvene next week, roll up new characters, right?
yeah.
Like, what's the point?
No,
Like, are we actually playing? And there's some people who enjoy playing like that. If you enjoy playing a tactic,
if
because
that's what the players have signed up for, then that's what
yeah,
they've signed up for.
and that's cool. And to be fair, like I did, like as I say, after we finished talking last week, I loaded up and aggroed the whole fort, and it was too much, and I
Mhm.
died. And
Okay.
I went back and did it again. Now this time I did actually have sort of too many, but I
Mhm.
strategized my way through it.
So
And I will say,
spoilers from here on out, because we're going to talk about some stuff. This is early in the game, but still spoilers.
I don't even think it's spoilers. It was
Oh,
just
it will be,
more.
because I'm gonna talk spoilers here about it.
Okay. Well,
Um,
one of the things that I discovered was that, like, first of all, shove is a little bit OP,
mhm.
which is kind of cool. And it was, now it is not just OP on the character's part, because I actually had a character in my party die from being shoved to their death, from full hit points to fully dead by being shoved off a cliff. Fair enough, poor positioning. And I rolled with that. I went back and resurrected them at camp. But I did, is it shockwave? No. What's the thing that bards get where it's thunderwave?
Underwave, yeah.
Yeah, where it was like, I ran Gale into the middle of a pack of things, and it's like, oh, mage is gonna die. Thunderwave, everybody failed. Wabomp down into the pit.
Yep.
And it was like that. That took it from oh my god, this is an insurmountable challenge, to okay, the boss is in the pit. Not my problem anymore, because there's things down there that are gonna kill him.
Yep. Yeah, that whole goblin compound was interesting for me. So, to go back to the original problem, like, you can go in and you can end up just aggroing the whole thing.
Yep.
But, and the reason why I say there's solutions to this problem, and why save scumming is just kind of a tool in this situation, like, you can go, you can talk to one of the three bosses, the woman, and you can sort of work the conversation where she's going to be like, "Hey, follow me to my little chapel-y thingy." It's
Yep.
just like a whole. You
I
end up
did.
with her on the own, and then you take her out, and then you go in and you deal with the other one basically on their own. After the king guy, who isn't the main bad guy, but the king guy, I
Oh,
ran
he
into a
isn't?
situation.
Uh-oh.
No, there's so the way it works in the goblin compound is you have
There's the
potentially
goblin
two
priestess.
characters. Yeah, there's two characters that you can kind of come away with, depending on if you're playing evil or good. There's Halcyon, the druid, who's the bear that you go in and find.
And I haven't gotten to him yet.
Okay. And then there's a drow woman at the end, Minthara or whatever, who's one of the people you have to kill. And she's the most
Is
powerful
that
of them.
the mistress of the night?
Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, she was actually pretty easy if you
She
manage to get
wasn't.
in and if you get in and talk to her first.
Yep. You get in, you talk to her, you could basically get her on her own with a couple of ads and you take her out. The king's a little bit more difficult, but what I found is after doing the king, if I backed out into the main area, I immediately aggroed everyone anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But what I found it, and what I ended up doing to deal with that situation, because I tried it from up in the rafters, and I just on the medium difficulty setting, it wasn't going well, and I was probably a level early getting into that content.
Mm-hmm.
So it was particularly challenging. So what I ended up doing is I didn't open the doors after doing the king, and I could fast travel and come back at the compound from outside on that bridge. And I used that bridge as a choke point, instantly aggroed everything again, but they were coming at me through the gate, and there's a couple of like mini barricade things,
Yes.
and ended up taking them out there. And that's the game within the game. Like, that, to me, that's a
Well,
perfectly viable play style.
well, sure. There's a story that you're going through, but there's also the tactical aspect of the game. I haven't
Mhm.
actually fought my way out, by the way. I have killed the priestess. What's her face? I have killed Minthara, or whatever, the night weaver, whatever they called her, and I have killed Grognar, the red dude who looks up at the ship as it's crashing in the opening. Forget what the heck his name is. And then I've rescued Volo. And then like there's still a cave entrance that I have to go in. There's still behind the priestess's place. I killed the ogre lady, and I've opened the portal to the Underdark, but I didn't go through it. And I haven't fought my way out of the rest of the goblin compound yet either. But what I did with the big red guy, the king, I think the guy with the leadership aura, whoever the heck that is I closed the doors, I killed the goblins on either side and sort of around the place, so he didn't have as many reinforcements to call. And then I positioned everybody against the wall in the corner by the pit with the two spiders in it. And then I opened the doors with what's her name? The barbarian. Starts with a K. Karlak, thank you. Sorry, it just slipped my mind. She fired an arrow in and then ran back into the corner. So everybody's standing against the wall, and they all come out, right? And I had Gale and my ranger up in the rafters, firing arrows and fireballs and grease and ice and various things. And then when they finally did get out there, it was just like push them into the pit. I mean, shove is so OP.
Now it's not something that comes up in my games a lot, like my actual tabletop games. But I've noticed in combat that shove seems to be available when I don't think I should have the action cost available to use it. And that's part of what makes it really, really OP. I'll be like, I've used an action. I'm pretty sure I've used my bonus action. And for some reason I can't jump, but I can still shove.
Shove is a bonus action in Baldur's Gate 3. It's a bonus action, and in the 5e rules, it's an action.
Yeah.
Yes, and it's a good action. It's an underutilized action, I think. But yeah, it's a little bit more powerful, and I have a feeling that there's a nerf coming for it because it does make things a little bit too easy. I do think that it makes sense for it to be a bonus action.
I don't. I'm going to disagree in that I think it makes things too easy, because I mean you're not at the point in the game yet, but you will get very quickly to a point where yes, it's easy for you to take advantage of it, but your enemies are going to take advantage of it more and more too, and you're going to be in terrain that really punishes poor positioning.
Right.
And so I mean it's
you mentioned that you were under
good for the goose is good for the gander kind of thing, and having yourself being shoved around is
frustrating.
Adds a whole another layer of tactics. And most of the times where I've had to resave, like go back to a save in combat, because I was just hosed by positioning, was the result of I engaged in a conversation while I was on a bridge, or and that's perfectly viable. You know what? Like I should have saw that coming. Oh, I'm standing on the edge of a thing by lava, and I'm going to piss this guy off. Yeah, there's been a few situations where like it's automatic combat, like as soon as you get into range, that I found a little bit frustrating, and I've had to kind of work my way around, like to the point where I've definitely blown some invisibility just to get some people in a better position before moving one character into that range to start that conversation. But again, the game within the game.
It would be really nice because there's a thing that a lot of DMs do on tabletop, and I do have a question. Remind me before I move on to another tangent. There's a thing that some DMs do that I really appreciate, which is like you get into a thing where it's like, okay, everybody roll for initiative. Now, how are you positioned in the room? Right. And it has to be reasonable. It's not like, oh, I'm exactly behind the person I want to backstab. No, it's like, okay, which one of you is in front? Which one of you is behind? You know, was one of you headed towards the bar? Like you came into this place knowing you were going to be in combat. Like there should be a certain amount of like positioning your characters at the start of combat, as opposed to bling initiative. Haha, you got stuck with, like one person 30 yards in front and everybody behind.
Yeah,
it's just a little unfair.
Yeah, I try to listen, when combat is inevitable, and the players have already done something to kickstart combat, I
Hmm.
don't generally say then at that point, how are you positioned roll for initiative? But what I do try to do is when my players enter a particular space where combat is a potential outcome,
Hmm.
I'll try and give them an opportunity to read that and position themselves
Yeah.
before I just am like, and then they attack you. Like I'll give them the opportunity before the
Yeah.
the NPCs respond to find the advantageous areas. And going back to the shove thing, um, players in real D&D, as a DM, I would love for you to consider things like shove more than you do, because it encourages you to interact with and ask questions about the environment that a lot of players don't do.
Yeah.
And especially now it's a little bit harder when you're playing with a VTT because you tend to look at a map and try and take everything literally. But if you look at that as just sort of a low detail representation, like if you're saying things like, "Hey, is there anywhere I can shove this guy off?" Maybe the answer, maybe there wasn't until you asked that question. But I'm going to be like, yeah, they're not standing right at the edge of the cliff or anything. But if you want to get clever about moving this guy and pulling him in a
Hmm.
particular direction, sure, there's a cliff there.
It would be nice too to see something like a maneuvering attack that battle masters get, something like that, where uh, the control that you have over your opponents on the battlefield was a little bit more explicit, right? Where it's like you do this, and fourth edition gets a lot of bad press, and I'll be honest with you, I didn't really enjoy fourth edition all that much, mostly because it turned everything into a complete tactical game, which is fine if you
It
enjoy
was
fourth
wargamey
edition.
too much,
Great,
but just
yep.
like
But
the
that's
the
that's that's what it was.
the
It
yeah, oh
very
yeah,
much,
absolutely. But the drag, the slog of combat, this little encounter is going to take 7 hours.
yeah. So we're having one encounter today because that's what it's going to take, and that could be fine if it's interesting enough. But most of the time, like I know myself as a DM, I'm not talented enough to make that interesting.
Hmm.
So it didn't really work for me. I really like second edition for exactly that reason, where everything about the game is so unbalanced that you're not thinking tactically. You're thinking about how to move the story forward.
Hmm.
So to backtrack to the question that I had, you said you were under leveled to go into the Goblin Fort. What level did you go in at?
I'm not. Well, I want to say it was only like 3, maybe
Yeah, 3 would be a little under
3,
leveled.
maybe it was 4.
Yeah, because I'm
3,
fourth level, and it was a little bit challenging if I didn't break it up first. Because
yeah.
I took the Priestess Gut first, and I did actually do that 2 or 3 times until I was able to kill her before she called for help.
Hmm.
Mostly because when you exit, there's those Zentarim merchants, and the one of them disappears if you don't actually engage them in combat. And I wanted to kill them all. I actually went back to see if I could lure them all into that room full of explosives, and it
Did you?
turns out that no, I can't.
Okay.
I cast minor illusion in there, and one of them came in and immediately said, "You're not allowed
Hmm.
to be in here." And it's like,
Yeah.
well, what do you mean I'm not allowed to be in here? I cast an illusion in here. I'm not even in there. Shut up. Go away.
Did
Anyway.
you end up killing them all though?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay.
They don't have any really interesting loot. There's some nifty stuff
Okay.
there, but I was interested. You made a comment the other day that magic items and loot is pretty, you know, available, and I'm like, really? Because I have like a +1 sword. It'd be
Well, I mean, dude, you're
no. I and then like
yeah,
literally in the next 15 minutes of the game, it was like, oh wow, I have all this
yeah,
all this magical loot, and I don't know what to do with it.
yeah. It definitely felt more Diablo than like a tabletop game in terms of
A
loot,
little,
which is
but
fine. It's a game. It's a video game. It's a concession you make. It
yeah,
you know.
It's also one of the things that I would like to praise about the way that they did loot is that a lot of their magic items do a thing that I really enjoy doing as a DM, where it's like, yeah, it's a +1 axe, but here's a nifty thing that it does.
Yep.
Right. And they really did that well, where it's like, hey, if you dash, you can jump as a free action, or
Yep.
if you're concentrating on a spell, then you can do
Hmm.
this.
And some of them are very, very niche in such a way that, like, if you go and take those sort of odd choices in your spell selection or your character
Hmm.
stuff, like there's just enough items that cater to almost every particular niche that one of them is going to show up and you're going to be like, oh wow,
Yep.
that's great. And I'm rewarded for doing something that, most people wouldn't do by.
There's one that I really want to use, but it is so, what's the word I'm looking for? What's the thing where you do when you munchkin things? You make things really efficient, really uh
Like min-max,
yeah,
power game.
but it is so anti-efficient. Whatever the word is. I mean, put the word in the comments below if you're actually listening and paying
Mhm.
attention.
Like
Uh,
suboptimal. Like what do you?
Suboptimal. There you
Okay.
go. It's anti-optimal.
Yeah.
I found this item called Gloves of the Abyss, something like that. They're pink, like they're super super rare. It's like, oh wow, this is really really powerful. Except the effect on them is basically when you summon a creature, your summoned creature has resistance to every damage type except psychic. However, every turn they roll a saving throw, and if they fail, they attack whoever's nearest, friend or foe, because they go crazy. And I'm
Chaos to
like,
the win.
I mean, it's so awesome, and I so badly want to use them, of course, because I have like a mage who summons a thing. I have Karlak who can summon a thing. I have me who can summon. I'm basically sending a bear out to growl
But
and distract me.
that's one of those situations where, like, if you know you're going to be getting into one of those big encounters where, like, it's 4 versus 20, like you're skewing
Summon
the
it and
odds in
run.
your favor, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah, summon it and run.
yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Like this is one of those in the early days of EverQuest where playing a bard was really interesting, and bards got nerfed so many times because there were 2 or 3 people on Earth who could actually do things to maximize the efficiency of it.
Hmm.
And in the original game, it was you would sing a song, cast a spell. It takes 3 seconds. All of your spells take 3 seconds. Which meant that if you went cast number 1, and as soon as it's done, you cancel it, cast number 2, you would actually have to go 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, and so on and so forth. Every one of those was basically focused by a different instrument. So you could go, like, you would literally switch out an instrument, cast or sing the song, start the next song, switch out the instrument, but you were just like click, 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 click. Like people were getting carpal tunnel syndrome. But if you could actually do it, you were 900 times more efficient than anyone else. And this
Yeah.
is the kind of thing I don't want to get into, where it's like, okay, so I'm going to swap these gloves for those gloves in order to summon the thing, and then I'm going to swap those gloves for these gloves in order to. Nah, I'm not doing that.
Nah. And definitely don't need an RPG to feel like StarCraft.
No, I do not. I do
What's your
not want to
build
look
order,
at.
brah? Like,
Oh my god, how many APS are you doing?
uh,
Yeah. No, not happening. I am really enjoying the game. I have noticed, and I don't know if this is because I'm doing things slightly differently and I'm just not noticing, but I have noticed that doing the same social interaction a second time will sometimes give me a slightly different response.
mhm.
Like the same flavor of response. It's like, hey, it's a favorable response, but they're using different words. And if that is the case, those poor voice actors, because they must have put like 100,000 hours of voice
Oh
acting into
yeah.
this game.
Yeah. So quick update where I am. I officially hit level 12, so I'm at cap today.
Wow.
I And funny enough, you say you're 30 some odd hours in your playtime. Like I'm only about double that.
Oh wow.
Um, I've I'm going to avoid major spoilers here.
Please.
Towards the end of the game, there's 3 key people and things that you need to deal with. I've dealt with 2 of them. And then there's the big thing you need to deal with afterwards. And I'm not there yet, but I'm at the point where I'm wrapping up some of the character stories
Mm-hmm.
for the companions. Finally got Minsk, who, you know what? This is going to come across funny because we're sitting here praising the voice actors, and they're
Mhm.
fantastic. They're fantastic. Um, for some reason, having Matt Mercer voicing Minsk, it just pulled me out. Like, it wasn't that he
Yep.
was bad,
It's because
because
he's
he
Matt
wasn't
Mercer.
bad, but it was because he's Matt Mercer, and it just
Yep.
completely pulled me out. And because it's a character that is so
Iconic.
iconic, but also so not Matt Mercer,
Yeah.
that just the weird combination, just it's fine. Like it's fine, and it's quite entertaining. But
But it's
uh,
no longer a game. Now it's like spot the star.
yeah.
Spot the celebrity.
Which, I mean, there's a lot of talented big name voice actors that do work in this game, but at no point have I ever been like, oh, hey, is that so and so? Oh, hey, is that so and so? And in this particular case, I mean, you can't avoid it because it's Matt Mercer. I would say the same thing if like they had Brennan Lee Mulligan doing it, or somebody else, you
Keanu
know.
Reeves. I mean,
Yeah.
that was a big problem for me in Cyberpunk. Is like, this is Keanu Reeves, and I'm like, okay, this character is an asshole, but it's voiced by Keanu Reeves. Like, this is a bad choice.
Yeah, but at least the character was still like it was a, like Keanu Reeves is, going back to our conversation about, actors that you do or don't want to meet, or celebrities. Like
Uh,
he's the
I
one dude that's the exception to that rule. He's like the
I would
nicest man in the world. And
I would totally meet Keanu Reeves.
so while I don't buy that he could be a Johnny Silverhand, at least it was a character that was created around Keanu Reeves. It wouldn't be like Keanu Reeves trying to play Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's not Keanu playing like Conan the Barbarian or something like that, right? And that's what
Okay,
having
listen,
Matt
hang
Mercer
on. Oh, hold on, stop. Hollywood, if you're listening, if you remake the Conan movie with Keanu Reeves as Conan, I'm in.
Oh, I'd totally be in too. It'd be ridiculous.
Yep, but I'd love it.
But that's sort of what having Matt Mercer doing Minsk was like, because it was just,
Yeah.
anyway. But I got him. I have to say, while most of the Shadowheart stuff felt flat initially, I just finished her story, and wow.
I Shadowheart is one of the ones I've been having a little bit of difficulty with because her concept, I guess, like her character concept, is so antithetical to my personal. Like, I have a real hard time doing I'm going to try and do a playthrough on this, like then after I'm finished doing it one time, where I go through as I'm going to try and really lean into making Lae'zel happy, not being evil, not being neutral, but just not
Mhm.
worrying about good and worrying about what is the most pragmatic thing to do. But I have a real hard time with that. And Shadowheart strikes me as, this kind of seems evil, but I just sort of to say I've seen some depth developing in her. I've got to the point where she just asked, like she had the little, I'm a quest NPC above her head, and the thing she told me about was the scene where she's been attacked by wolves or whatever.
Mhm.
I'm assuming, and please don't tell me whether I'm right or wrong,
Nope.
I'm assuming by what I've seen so far that she's very much in a position like the paladin, no, crusader, whatever his face is in Diablo 3, where it's like, I am all for this, and they've taken out this, and they've taken me and wiped away my evil memories, and now I'm this. And it turns out that, well, no, that's not really the truth. I'm assuming that she's been brainwashed a little bit and she doesn't remember things that came before that because they took her memories away. And it's going to turn out that, the priesthood of Shar is not necessarily as altruistic as she thinks they were.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, that's the
What I
vibe I
will say
get.
about her character is that, like, depending on what sort of direction you nudge her
Uh-huh.
and how you encourage her, she can go to one of two extremes.
Oh.
And that's interesting. And it all kind of comes to a head at the end of her storyline. Um, and she's basically got like an ultimate decision that she has to make. And it
One
is
would, yeah.
like a not the decision that you would think. Like she makes that decision and then it leads to another series of events, and then she has a big decision, like a gut punch decision
Oh.
that she has to make. And while I felt that the writing for her character and just, the characterization of her character starts off as flat, by the time it gets to this, like the voice acting, the talent, the mocap that they did for her emotions and stuff, like it just, wow, like, suck the air out of the room in a good way, kind of like, holy shit.
It's a story and it has impact. That's nice.
Oh, super impact. And like, I've been through most of Gail's stuff. I've been through I haven't done all of Will's stuff yet.
He
Um
seems like a complicated character.
there's some fun stuff tied to him. I find him as a character a little bit flat. Now he's actually become a staple in my party. I tend to lean on him versus Gail. Um but
Warlocks are more powerful, man.
more powerful, and there's just some versatility. Gail, I've run into a few instances. Now, there's times when I have to swap people in, right? Because you're dealing with character story, plot, questy kind of stuff. So you got to have them there. And there's times when you'll need other people for like tactical things too. But um, it's funny. Like Eldritch Blast is a bit of a meme, right?
It's so like there's so much utility in that one cantrip.
Well, just having the once you get the pushback on it,
Yep.
right? Like that's where having the combination of that and Will can still roll fireballs too. Like you got both of
Yes.
the meme spells in one character there.
Yep.
And while I would like some more spell slots, I mean, the benefit of being able to short rest some of them
Scrolls
back
though.
and whatever. Yeah, you know what? One thing I haven't done, and it's because I don't use Gale enough, is I haven't had him like got some crazy powerful scrolls. Like, I think I just found my second or third scroll of Disintegrate, for instance. And I haven't had Gale learn any of those spells. I mean, by the time you get to level 8 or 10 with him, like he's spells for days. He's a wizard, right?
Yes.
But there's some of them that, like, if I were maining him in my party, I would probably have him pick up pay the gold cost and learn the spells from the scrolls, because wizard.
I've had him learn a few spells. I actually used my scroll of fireball during the Goblin Fort fight because it was required. It's like there's 12 of them in range of a fireball. I'm casting fireball. Like it just doesn't.
Yeah.
I didn't kill any of them, but I reduced a bunch of them to 1 and 2 hit points. So
Nice.
that's a big deal.
I haven't done all of Asturian stuff. He's the one party member I'll say that, like, I've barely used.
I haven't met him yet. There's an interesting thing. I was reading someone's description. You know what? Remind me for our next episode, and I will actually read you the post from Reddit because I saved it. It was a person describing their first. They're playing through the game. They're a little bit slow in the game, and they're not even as far as I am at this point. And they started on day one because there are 3 or 4 of them, and they're playing through as a group for their first playthrough. But describing what they do, and it's like, okay, so we met this girl in a pod on the spaceship, and we just went, it's not important, we'll just move on. So they left her there, Um, and then they met, and then we met this pale dude, and he threatened one of us, so we killed him. And then there was somebody who was stuck in a portal, and we weren't able to pull him out, so he died. And it was just like every single thing that you could do, every character, and then we met this demon lady, and I mean, obviously she's a demon, so we killed her. Like literally every NPC you're supposed to recruit, they just killed them. And I'm curious if you can go through the game, and at some point, I mean, I'm
Well,
going to play
yeah,
through this
you're
game.
gonna get you don't have withers yet, no?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so you can hire like hirelings, so you can.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can go without them. But I mean, like they're a full party on their own, so they don't really need any of the NPCs.
Yeah, no.
But it's just kind of funny. Like your story is going to be super short because you're not doing any of the NPC sort of side quest story stuff, and you just whoever you just kill everybody. Like it would be fun. Eventually, we'll get to know everything about the game, and we'll do a playthrough. It would be fun to do a group playthrough where it's just like we're literally just murder hobos. Oh, the thing that was really entertaining to me was they got to the druid compound, and one of them went, "I wonder what this idol thing is," and they just picked it up. So the whole druid compound, and they're like, "It was a hard fight, but we got through it and we killed them all." So they literally wiped out all the druids. I'm like,
and the game lets you do it.
It does. I mean, it's a very wide open sandbox game. But the funny thing is that like it's not worth reading now because I've told you everything that's in it. But one of the things is like our inventories are getting really full. It's hard to find vendors. It's like, well, yeah, like the only vendors that I've found so far are in the druid in the grove. And you killed them. They're gone. You can't sell any of your stuff.
Did you do
Also-
sorry, just to go back to the goblin compound for a second. Did you do the chicken thing?
I did not do the chicken run through. I kind of wanted to, but at the same time, I'm in a weird position where I'm trying really hard to role play my character as I've conceived them. And one of the things is my character is a ranger. They're very focused on, and not only that, but like I spared the owlbear. So I have to assume that this is that same owlbear. And the only reason that I didn't actually fight the goblin over keeping the owlbear is I looked around and went like, there's hobgoblins and goblins and piles of goblins. I don't think I can survive this. If I thought there was a chance I could survive, I would have attacked them over the fact they were holding the owlbear. But it seems like it's probably a really funny obstacle course run thing.
Well, and just what a funny thing to run into, like this, this little goblin chick is just like, yeah, killing dudes or whatever. That's nothing. But you haven't seen real action until you chasing chickens.
Here's the thing, though. Have you ever actually chased in real life? Have you ever chased a chicken?
I have not. I've seen it in real life.
I have actually chased a chicken, and let me tell you this: in my youth, I was fast, and I had agility. I could do all of those things. I was athletic. I could not catch a chicken.
No,
and it wasn't like, oh, geez, if I practiced at this, I might be able to. Nope, there is no chance in hell I would ever catch a chicken.
Yep.
They are random and fast and sharp. Anyway, so yeah. That's
you ran into the troll and ogre thing too. I saw that in your
chat. Oh my god, the expression on that bugbear's face. It's walk in and they both look around. It's like, ooh, and then he pulls up his pants. Oh my god. This game is not rated PG-13.
And that they put that, like, there's no, like, I would imagine.
There's no reason. There's no story.
Yeah, there's no story. It's in a place where, like, 80% of players are never going to see it.
Nope.
You just, oh, hey, there's a little barn there. Oh, hey, there's a door. Let me open it and see what's inside. Oh, I'm interrupting something pretty private.
Yes, you are.
And then they went to the trouble to even like mocap or I don't know if it was actual mocap, but rigging at least for the characters where like your character walks in, or at least mine did, sees that the facial expression changes and he just puts his hands up like,
I've interrupted something personal. I tried to leave. I did. I was like, listen, I'll just shut the door and pretend I was for a year. Oh, that was great.
All right. Well, we were supposed to just touch on Baldur's Gate briefly
It's a
before moving on to the main topic. We're going to skip the main topic and move right to some table talk because I'm sure it's going to be related. It's your
yeah.
question.
Well, all right. Well, it is definitely related because I was looking at all of the things that happened in Baldur's Gate and how deep it is. Where do your ideas come from? And this also relates to the sort of the nerd fight we've got going on. Where do your ideas come from? Like, how do you create something for your players, and what happens? What do you do? How do you recover when something goes wrong? Your players do something you're not expecting and go in a direction that is unplanned for.
It's tough. What I don't have is a faucet that I can just and ideas flow out of it. Um, a lot of my ideas, like when I do prep work, it's like, oh, here's some themes that I'd like to explore, some tone. Like, I do think sometimes in terms of set pieces, not necessarily related to combat encounters, but just in general. Um, for example, my world that I created, like it was, just an idea of like I want to do post-apocalypse. It isn't post-apocalypse. I want to do D&D in a world where there aren't wizards standing on every corner of water deep hawking magic and stuff. And I mean, that was the extent of it. And then, put magic players in it and kind of do a thing. But most of my big story ideas are developed as a result of player backstory. I just don't, that's a cop out answer. Um, but I have the sort of the framework that I go, and then I look at the player backstory, and I'll work with the players to try and figure out, okay, how does this fit in the world a little bit? Or I'll have players that just decide, fuck your world, I'm just going to be a space kitty and crashed here.
I'm sorry.
It's fine. It's fine. I was going to make it work. Like I had shit that I was going to do. Hell, I had, and I don't know if we'll ever get into it now, so I'm going to spoil it.
Okay.
I had, not only do I have shit for your character, I have shit for your backup character that I had planned for this world.
Wow.
So do you remember and I know, because I mentioned it when we were doing some other robot related thing, I referred to your syntax error Warforged thing.
Oh yeah, that was an off the cuff kind of never gonna happen. Here's an interesting idea for a character.
So in my game, and this is going to spoil it because we probably won't get back to that particular thing if we do get back into that campaign. The thing with the dead rats was him crashed in an escape pod, and the spaceship was leaking. So you guys were in the middle of trying to figure out. There was a building that was in the middle of being demolished. There was looked like an explosion at one point. Well, it was actually sort of an implosion because something crashed into it. You were going to kind of go down and you would find this, he would be turned off. Like it would just be a shell. And my thinking was, well, you know what? If I fucking kill Towson's character, like I could just see, because it was your character concept, you're going to have this guy like sitting in a closet somewhere back at your tavern, and
he
you
just
just
wakes
wake
up.
up. You just wake up.
That's awesome.
But, that's an example of you said something or did something. I probably gave you enough time to forget about it. And then I would have brought it back. And I do that with a lot of my players, or I take something that they clearly expect to go a certain way and I twist it. Like I will take things in very different directions, but hopefully satisfying directions. Their friends become their antagonists, their antagonists become their friends. They
Their
find out
characters that their character sheet was taken away become the big bad in the next campaign.
Yeah. I haven't done that with any of my characters. I haven't had a player death or something resulting in loss of control of a player yet with that group. But I've done a lot of things like, just as a rough example, the setup, like I asked my players, hey, give me just like point form notes. What's your character's basic motivations? Why are you doing what you're doing? And the setup for both your game and my Tuesday night game was fairly similar. You've got this organization that seems to have some sway in the world. They've headhunted you. You've got some skills. Normally, you would probably turn this offer down, but I want you to have reasons to accept it. You're
Mm-hmm.
looking for something. You need to find out something. Maybe you need to find out something about this company, whatever. So, another one of my players had a character, for instance, who was masquerading as their sister because their sister was missing, and it was her sister that had actually received the job offer. And she thought there was some sort of connection to this organization because she'd had a brother go missing too. And
Oh.
she posed as her sister to sort of take this job, not to miss the opportunity because her sister wouldn't be able to do it. And that turned into a whole thing. But then I had this sister character there to do something with, right? And while she was
Mm-hmm.
expecting sort of a typical, oh, my sister's gone missing or whatever, I basically turned her not into a bad guy, but like a morally gray, questionable, like vigilante character. Like
Oh.
like Batman if Batman killed people. So Batman from the Ben Affleck Batman movies.
Batman from the 40s.
No, she was doing the thing where like she was, identifying bad people. The systems were failing to provide justice, so she was just getting rid of the bad people.
Hawkeye from the second Avengers movie.
Sort of, yeah. And it resulted in some things like, oh, well, if her sister's out there doing bad stuff and she's pretending to be her sister, then, oh, well, now there's wanted posters of her sister tied to this murder that happened. And she ran into a random person in a place who accuses her of killing her son because she saw her. And, just usually most of my ideas come from something at least tangentially related to something my players have established. And that's more like a conscious choice for me in terms of world building and playing. Like I sort of set the initial state,
Mm-hmm.
and almost everything else should kind of be a reaction to some sort of player thing. Like I still have things that I want to shoehorn in to explore. Like I'm a player too, but most of that is going to be twisting their shit into exploring particular themes, particular places, particular whatever that I'd like to kind of nudge things towards as a DM. But sometimes I just have a lot of like like our show notes for a podcast. Holy shit, I got a session tomorrow night and I don't know what to do. And then, I'll be in the shower or something and it's like
It's just random things.
just a random thing. They're usually what's the term? It was popular in like Star Trek. It's like bottle episodes or cave episodes or something like that, where it's just like,
Yeah.
shit, we have no budget. We just need to have something happen in like a single location, and well, it'll be neat. It'll be good.
We need to film The Room.
I've done a lot of stuff like that. Like, hey, they're on their way back home to, well, not home, but to this place because they've resolved sort of a mini arc, and they get back, and I'm like, I really don't have the next shit planned, so they're going to get there and find time has stopped. There's a little
Or
bit of puzzle
something.
they got to solve. Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
whatever. Buy myself some time to think about something that moves the bigger plot a little bit more. And I lean on tropes too. Like that's the one thing I would say with playing tabletop games as a player and as a dungeon master is, you know what? It's not. Don't only lean on the tropes, but don't be afraid to lean on them.
There was a thing, I was watching Red Letter Media today, which we've talked about before, and they were talking about, they did a thing, and I forget the actor's name, but he's an actor that you've seen in the background of every movie that you've ever seen. And they watched 3 movies where he was the star.
Oh, yeah, we just watched that one the other night.
Right. And one of the things that Jay Bauman said in that episode was that cliches are cliches for a reason. It's because when they're done well, they work. And that's really what you're describing, is that cliches are okay. Cliches are fine. you just don't do them because they're cliches. You lean on them because when they're appropriate, they're appropriate.
Mhm.
Just they come up a lot. And that, for me, my answer is much simpler. Is I just steal it from somewhere.
Yeah.
Like, every good story has been told. Every story is the same story. It's the ugly duckling over and over and over again. And you find something. If you can find a little twist, a little bit of something different.
And that's the key thing. Now, I notice this is a trend in video games recently, particularly in indie video games. Not so much like ideas for story and stuff, but like mechanics of games,
Mhm.
genres, where they're like, what if we did roguelike, but it was also a collector card game? What if we did, this, but it's also this?
What if?
What if? And that's a good approach. Like take something that is the ultimate cliche and then find that one little thing that just turns it on its head or makes it a little bit different. One of my favorite things, and I think I've mentioned it before. I don't know if you've had a chance to watch it or not, but Dimension 20, Brennan Lee Mulligan did a mini sort of series. Like most of his D&D campaigns are a little bit longer, but it was like a 6 episode mini campaign called Escape from the Blood Keep.
Hmm.
And it was the ultimate cliche. Like, it was the fantasy cliche. It's, what if we did Lord of the Rings? But what if our players were cartoonish parody of the bad guys? And it's literally like, it starts up, they set up, they introduce the characters, and they're all takes on some of the B bad guys from like
Hmm.
Shelob and whatnot from the Lord of the Rings. And at the very start, they introduce the characters, and the stand-in for Sauron dies. He's this eye, and this eye is just like shit, fuck, and it just blows up.
So now you got to take
And
over and
now,
figure out
now,
how to.
now the armies of the good guys are approaching the Blood Keep, and what are you gonna do? And I mean, they were all cartoonish characters, and again, with these shows, they're gifted voice actors, character actors, or creators, or miscellaneous stuff. So they're not reflective of your average person sitting around a tabletop thing. But that doesn't change the idea that, hey, this, what's the most cliched fantasy thing ever? It's Lord of the Rings.
It's
It
Lord of
it
the
it
Rings.
wasn't cliched when it was created. It created the cliche.
Yeah.
And it was just like, well, what if Lord of the Rings, but from the perspective of the bad guys and silly? And
Yeah.
honestly, it's some of the most enjoyable stuff I've watched. It gets a little bit cringy and a little bit like, some of the characters push past the line into a little bit annoying, but that's fine. Like, it's
Yeah.
small doses. It's a six episode thing, so that's perfectly acceptable.
Yeah.
And just the whole idea was just fun. So if you haven't watched it, check it out.
I should. I will.
It is available on YouTube, so you don't have to worry about trying to subscribe to something or illicitly try and find it. It is one of the things. I'm not sure if it's on the College Humor channel or if it's on the Dropout channel, but just search "Escape for the Blood Keep." You'll find a playlist for it, and it's all available. It's got Matt
Fantastic.
Mercer in it as a player, Erika Ishii, some of the other Dropout / College Humor guys. It's all good.
It's entertaining stuff.
Yep.
So I have to introduce a new segment here where I discover that I've had a little bit too much alcohol, and I need to exit for a minute.
Many, many minutes later.
And I would like to clarify, because I know that you're going to leave some portion of that in, that I was not leaving to be sick. I was leaving because I had to pee.
I wasn't going to leave any of that in. I was going to cut it out. We are the absolute model of professionalism here at Nerding Under the Influence.
We are. One of the glorious things about getting older, though, is that you get to the point where you're less self-conscious about things. And it's just like, you know what? I'm suffering.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go relieve that. Yeah. I would also like to point out there's an interesting thing that has just happened where sometimes the things that we have the least amount of planning for have the most legs.
Yep.
Like our note for Baldur's Gate is let's talk about Baldur's Gate a little bit. And that was like 40 minutes of us just talking about it.
Yeah, I had a whole made up sort of main topic, just like last minute, like, oh, hey, here's something we could talk about. Nope.
We didn't even get to it. We can put that for next
Like,
week.
imagine what my description for this video is going to have to be. 3 times wasn't enough, so here's another hour of Baldur's Gate. I'm gonna have to rename the podcast or just the Baldur's Gate show now.
Okay, next week, actual play of Baldur's Gate.
Well, that's the funny thing, because you were like, oh, I'm going to read this Reddit post to you, but I'll wait for next week. And I was like, oh no, we're going to have like a 6th fucking episode of Baldur's Gate.
Yeah, don't fool yourself. We're going to be talking about your second playthrough next week.
It's rough because Starfield's coming out, and I don't have a computer that I think can play Starfield. My computer's been slowly dying over the last couple of years, my gaming machine. And like I've been running into some crashing issues with Baldur's Gate. I don't think it's the game's fault. I think
I've been pretty good.
Yeah. Well, I was fine for the first like 2/3 of the game for me. It's only now that I'm in some bigger zones, and now they just made a patch which drastically reduced the size of the save files. But I think there was like an issue where not only the save files, but just the amount of like game profile data that was being stored in memory was just bloating up. And as you got further and further into the game, like it got to the point before the last patch where even starting conversations, like I always have a delay starting conversations because my machine is, a million years old now, but it was having an asset loading issue. I don't know. I think my SSD is probably starting to die, but like I'd start conversations and then like it was kind of funny because all my companions would be naked for about 2 or 3 seconds and then they're closing, like they'd pop in. But
I don't have that. I do sometimes have a couple of seconds of pause of just like here's the look on everyone's face while I'm waiting for my dialogue option to pop up.
And I mean you're running a pretty beefy PC. I'm still running something from like 2016. It barely meets the minimum requirements. I haven't done any upgrades. I've got the computer that I'm on now, which has a beefier APU in it, but I don't have a discrete graphics card, and I think my video card's dying too. So I hesitate to, for a couple reasons, just bring it up into this machine. So I'm gonna maybe buy a video card that I can use up here, but I want to do like save up and do a build at some point here in the coming months. If not,
it could be an episode.
Yeah, if not for Starfield, then probably for the Cyberpunk expansion.
Yeah.
I have Starfield for free though because I pay for Xbox Game Pass Ultimate. There is the option to do the cloud streamed version of it. I might try that out if my machine isn't going to play it natively, but there's some pretty fast-paced shooter segments of it, and the extra latency from the streamed version I don't think will jive, but
yeah, I don't know.
I don't want to talk about the fact that I'm on a million-year-old computer, and something I used to do is like every year to be an upgrade, not a full upgrade, but it'd like be incremental upgrades. Back in our LAN party days, like
there was always something.
There was always something, and I mean the cost of doing it now. And hey, I mean I've raised 4 kids and put a bunch of them through school, and like it's a thing, but here I am being all responsible and adult. Like I should just splurge. Fuck it. I would have back in the day.
Yeah, it's like eating food. I can live without food for a while. I need a new computer.
It's funny. I didn't say the last half of that sentence this week, but I was close. There's been a conversation with my my wife about I need new underwear, I need new shorts, and I like blew the laundry machine actually blew like the ass out of one of my pairs of shorts, and I don't have that many left, and I've got underwear that like they're skirts effectively.
Yeah.
And she's like, that's it, we're going shopping. And I'm like, yeah, but I mean, I've got some shorts, and they cover the skirts that I'm wearing for underwear. Because in my head, I'm thinking, well, I mean, I could go spend $100 on clothes, but that's like part of a video card or part of a, and I've and I didn't say that to her at the time. I knew she was probably thinking it, and if she listens to this, obviously she's gonna know now. But these are the things that are in my head. Like I haven't treated myself to a gaming computer upgrade of any kind since 2016, and
It's time.
I'm at the point where like there's just games I won't be able to play. And
Mhm.
I got to that point the last time. I can't remember what it was, but this time it's been a while, man. Like I'm running
Yeah.
an old i5 6600K, which is 4-core, 4-thread, no hyper threading. Only recently, aside from like the crashes and like degradation, I think it's dying. But my GTX 1070, which was the mid high end that I usually target at the time, was great. It's now finally getting to the point where like it's not or just meeting the minimum
Yeah.
requirements.
Still a pretty good card.
Oh, it's adequate. Like, and if I weren't playing,
You
it's been a
AAA, brand new.
it's been a hell of a couple of years, like from Cyberpunk to Starfield to Baldur's Gate 3 to even playing my little factory sim games like Satisfactory. It's like my machine is just really showing its age.
Yep. It's time.
Yeah. Yep. It's time. Hey, uh, Ian has a pod bag question that I know you're looking forward to.
Oh yeah.
You've got mail.
Spiders, mice, snakes, etc. What creatures just give you the willies beyond belief? When did you first experience this fear of them? And can you decipher why you are afraid of them?
I can. I have very, very specific memories and reasons why. I think I've told you before, but I haven't. I don't know if I've told the world at large. Frogs give me the willies,
Hmm.
and it wasn't always the case. When I was a kid, I used to, it's a typical, stereotypical, young boy thing, wandering into the marshes and whatever, and rivers and water and catching frogs because they're interesting to look at. I watched a horror movie called Frogs, and it was the sort of the shtick of the movie was is that like nature strikes back kind of deal where there's an island and turtles and alligators and frogs and things just overrun the island, and it's a terrible movie. It's absolutely awful. I highly recommend you don't ever go watch it. Nothing in the movie is scary. It's all very, very stupid. But the cover art for the movie is a giant frog with some arms and legs sticking out of its mouth. And my imagination got me to the point where I was thinking, okay, so frogs don't really have teeth. They do kind of have proto teeth, but they don't really have teeth. So frogs swallow things, and then you're inside this sort of fleshy sack full of acid just being slowly digested while you're conscious. And I had a nightmare about it that normally I don't remember things like that. Like you have a nightmare, you wake up, you forget it pretty quickly. This one has stuck with me, and I had this nightmare when I was 6 or 7 years old, which is now like 40 some years ago. And I still remember, I vividly remember the sensation of basically being stuck in a garbage bag full of acid and being slowly digested as you can feel all of it. So
It's like having
for
your
that,
own itty bitty sarlacc.
yeah, exactly. So that's the memory that I have, and the reason that frogs give me the willies. I'm not scared of them. They just because I can every time I see one, I remember that feeling.
there's lots of things that give me the willies. So I guess we can need to define, like, there's low level willies and then there's the willies. Like, Tanya's a really, really like big arachnophobe, and so was my sister growing up. So I always had spider duty. I don't like spiders myself. Like, given the choice, like I wouldn't like let one crawl on me. I know there's people that, have pet spiders and they pull out their tarantula and it's crawling all over them and stuff. No, I wouldn't do that, but I'm not afraid of them.
Hmm.
But I would say that that same level of just willies that I have for spiders, I have for a lot of things. Like, a lot of insects, like praying mantis is one that just, like, if you ever look at one close and it doesn't give you nightmares, there's probably something wrong with you. They're one of the most alien looking creatures on our planet.
Yeah, I
And
think they're fine.
oh, they're absolutely fine, and they're harmless. And most of the things that give me the minor level willies are harmless. Things like snakes, things like, there's just a lot of things that's like, yeah, I just don't want to touch it.
Hmm.
But there is one thing that absolutely gives me high level heebie jeebies, like high level. And I attribute this to like a biological genetic instinct type thing, as a lot of fears are dead things, specifically dead mammals. Like, I'm fine touching a dead fish, I'm fine scooping up a dead insect or whatever. But mammals, people, like, the instant they pass. Like, it could be, I've had a lot of pets, like, over the years. I'm an old guy now, and we've always been animal people. And unfortunately, had to have situations where it's like, okay, I'm sitting with an animal that's on its way out, and I'm with them in that last minute, and I'm touching them, holding them, patting their head, and then the moment the flicker goes out from their eyes, there's just an instant like physical revulsion to touching them, to, like, if I'm taking them out and burying them, doing the nice grave thing, like, I have to immediately have them wrapped up in like a towel or a blanket or something. I can't touch them. I can't. So going to things like wakes, right, where typically it's an open casket thing, you're expected to go up, and that's always been difficult for me. And um I've unfortunately, I'm at that age where people are passing all the time, and like, my father died, oh, I guess it's 7 or 8 years ago now. And that's just one of those situations where, like, you can't be standoffish at that wake. I was in the hospital with him as he passed. Tanya, my sister, like, kind of the whole sort of family was there when he passed, and you have to say your goodbyes and stuff. And it's just such a wall of physical revulsion that, like, it's probably the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life, was when my dad passed, to touch him.
Mm.
And I get that there's, like, there's probably very good built-in sort of biological instinctual things, right? Like, often dead means disease.
Hmm.
And, avoiding touching dead things probably leads to a higher rate of survival and reaching reproductive ages and passing on genes. So I get why people would feel the way that I do, but it is one of the only things that, like, sets me off so much that it is a visceral physical reaction.
Hmm.
Like, I think I could, kill a person, like, actively take part in causing somebody to die more easily than touching somebody after they've died. And that's not to, say something bad about me. Like, I'm not an aggressive, violent person. I do think that, there's probably some people out there that need dying. there's some bad people, and if I was put in a position where, hey, defending my family or whatever, like, I don't own guns, I don't carry knives, like, I'm not that type of guy. But if I had to kill somebody with my bare hands to protect my wife or my kids or whatever, I would certainly do it. But somebody else would have to
Move the body.
move the body afterwards. Yeah. I could probably clean up the blood if there was blood. I could probably, but just the physically touching the body, I can't do it.
Well, I mean, that's probably a fairly reasonable revulsion to have.
And it's probably related to things like people that, arachnophobia or afraid of snakes, or like it's similar, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that there's a single traumatic experience that I could sort of say kick that off. I mean, the first dead family member that somebody expected me to touch, I was like, nope.
We have some kind of odd rituals around death in our society that when you look at them impartially, like why do we need to look at them after they're dead? Right? Why does there need to be a casket?
Well, and
I mean, closure is a thing for sure,
hey,
but
and I get that it's completely hypocritical. Like, I eat a steak.
yeah.
Like I would not want to touch a dead cow dying, like dead, it's whole,
But as soon as you chop it up, it's fine.
like I get that but that in my head, in terms of some sort of whatever it is that sets me off, is very, very different, and it is hypocritical, and I completely recognize that.
Well, phobias are by definition irrational. If they were
Absolutely.
rational, you'd be able to go, well, this because that, well, this therefore that. If you can't do that, it just is what it is.
And I admit that in ignoring this, I find the pastime of sports hunting quite, like, it turns me right off. And I know some people are into it, and I don't equate, well, if you needed to, survive and you're on an island, would you not hunt? That's something completely different. That's a survival thing. Recreational hunting for the joy of it is something that's completely different. And even without the idea of having to handle the body of an animal that has just been killed, I would still find it distasteful, but more so. But it only seems to really apply to mammals. Like, I can fish, and I can clean a fish, and that's fine. I pull apart a lobster that I've cooked, just
Anything with eyelashes.
yeah.
Mm.
Anyway, thanks, Ian, for that wonderful question.
Yeah, give us something a little more cheerful next week, would you?
Yeah. Hey, speaking of cheerful, you've got a good recommendation for parting gifts.
And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Anybody want a peanut?
This is a thing very similar to the parting gift you gave in the last episode, where it's like you kind of wonder, if you don't know about this, where have you been, and are you even on the internet?
Yeah, if you're listening to our show, not because you're related to us or family or your loved ones, but like because you're a nerd and you haven't run across this,
you need to go check it out right now. And it is the XKCD comic, and I forget the name of the guy who does it.
Randall Monroe.
Randall, yeah. You mentioned something earlier that was very much sort of in vein with that too, of like, what if? Because he's got two books now.
The second book out now, yeah.
Yeah, called What If, where he just asks crazy questions and then goes, or someone has asked him a crazy question that he doesn't have the answer to, and he goes and finds an expert, and then he's published 2 books. I haven't bought them yet. They are on my wish list for people who want to buy me things for Christmas. So if somebody wants to buy me things for Christmas.
Yeah, I don't have them yet either. Avid reader. It's not one of those ones I used to read every day. Well, every comic. Now it's one of those things that, once every couple of months I'll go back and binge a bunch until I find some that look familiar, and then I'll stop.
Yeah, I tend to hit the random button because there's a bunch of them I haven't seen.
Oh, dude, there's thousands of them at this point.
Yep.
For those of you that haven't run into it, he's one of the original stick figure web comics, particularly the
Yep.
ones that have a science bent. Smart dude. Like he is I don't even remember what his background is. He definitely has an engineering background of some sort, and has a way of explaining things like in an educational perspective, just like finding the interesting angle to
Yes.
get you thinking about something. But he's also got a very weird sort of,
He's a nerd.
he's a nerd, but like sometimes he just does things and he finds the right chord, the right string to pluck with me sometimes, and he'll do something like I've cried at an XKCD comic before.
Hmm. There's definitely some sentimentality involved in those kind of things.
Yeah, I mean, we started off our last episode talking about our thing with anthropomorphized animals. And that's one thing he really does a good job of, like taking nerdy things and um,
Humanizing them?
humanizing them. Yeah, like, you know,
Yeah.
whether it's direct anthropomorphization or just connecting it to human emotions in one way or another. And he's quite good at that. For a nerd that draws stick figures on the internet, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. He's very good at finding a way to make you think about things in a different way,
Mhm.
which is, useful in everyday life. So, yeah, it's good.
It is good. Hey, it's been good talking to you again.
Yeah, for sure. It for not having much of a plan, we sure talked a lot.
We sure did. I didn't get a chance to mention it last episode, so I will mention it this episode. We would love to hear from you. If you have podbag questions you'd like to send, maybe some user submitted parting gifts, fire us an email. Podbag at nerdingundertheinfluence.com. Also,
That's on brand.
that's on brand. Also, as a plug, we've just recently kicked off a new sort of side series, tentatively called Nerd Fights until it's called something else. Check out our YouTube channel, also called Nerding Under the Influence. You'll see a playlist there. Essentially, we have a mildly competitive little competition thing going. We just did round one. We've each submitted a video according to random criteria. If you listened to last episode, you know what that's all about. We'd love it if you take the time to listen and give us a like if you have a favorite. If you don't have a favorite or you like them both, like both vids, that will help us out a ton. We both, for such a silly little activity, put a fair bit of heart and energy into it. And that kind of feedback would be great. If you have a moment to drop a comment in, that'd be much appreciated too. But hey, if not, all you're doing is listening to this episode. That's good enough for me as well.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Especially, I would really like for someone to suggest something for me to drink because I'm obviously terrible at making those choices on my own.
Have you ever done Black Russians?
I
I know
think I
you're not a
have.
vodka guy, but do you have Kahlua in the house? Because you've got
I
that
do
vodka you
not.
need to get through.
There's actually not much of it left.
Okay.
Most of it disappeared tonight.
Well, the next time you find yourself with vodka that needs to be disposed of, just get yourself a small bottle of Kahlua. Mix them even. They're better cold. If you order them at a bar, you'll get a maraschino cherry in them, and it does change the flavor. It is better with the cherry,
Mm,
and it is better with a straw. The straw is actually an ingredient, but I'm fine drinking just the vodka and Kahlua, cold on ice
right.
if you have to. Tasty drink, but it is one of those drinks that's just super dangerous. You know, like
They
it's
go down easy.
well, they go down easy, and you're not mixing it with anything that isn't also alcohol.
It's
Right?
alcohol diluted with more alcohol.
Yeah, slightly
Yeah.
less strong alcohol, but alcohol nonetheless. And you only have to drink one, and you'll feel it. Drink
Yep.
two, and you're in a good spot. And personally, if we're going to kick off Nutty After Dark, Black Russians would be a good way to do it.
Well, yeah. We need to think about Nutty After Dark. Flip the little switch that says this is for 18 plus.